webinar will also be recorded from now on. So you are all aware that when you have any questions or will speak, that you will be recorded. But of course, we are sensitive with this data and don't do any misuse. We will not misuse them, but we will publish them later for other attendees, for other interests to hear what we are discussing today. Well, and in the end, when the webinar has ended, you will receive a questionnaire via email. And just a couple of questions to understand how you like the seminar, what we can improve, and so on and so forth. And of course, we would be very glad if you can take 1 or 2 minutes to answer these questions and send it back. Okay, that was it from my side. Have fun with the webinar.
Thanks a lot, Dirk. A brief view on the agenda. So we have the welcome and explanation of technology. If you have questions, put them on the technology or then later on the topics. Please raise them in written form under questions in your webinar tool. I will in a second hand over to Dr. Falk-Böhmecke from the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy to speak briefly about the German international energy policy, and will then briefly introduce the South African-German Energy Partnership. And then I will hand over to Jan-Ole Voss from Becker Büttner Health Law Firm and Matthias Puffe from Becker Büttner Health Consulting, which will look or provide us input on the German energy transition and municipal utilities, challenges and perspectives in a renewable world. After their presentation, we will have some time for question and answer. So especially if you have written questions, then those questions that we can't address during the session, we would then answer later in written form by email. And yeah, that all is followed by a wrap up and closing at the end, and also then information on our next webinar next week. So now I would hand over to Mr. Falk-Böhmecke from the BMWI.
Hello, everybody at the webinar. This is Falk. Thank you very much, Tobias, for the introduction. I'm with the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, and I won't bore you with the energy policy of Germany. You all probably know that we are completely changing our energy system in Germany, and we have a German word for that that is called Energiewende. And the translation for that would just be energy transition, because we are trying to find a transition to a more sustainable CO2-free energy system. What are we trying to do with international partnerships? We have about 20 energy partnerships with different countries in the world. And we are trying to find partners in the endeavor of a global energy transition. And we see that as a true partnership where we can actually learn from each other. Germany considers itself as being a front runner in the energy transition, but that doesn't mean that we cannot learn anything from others, because now, from our point of view, we are in the second, third, or fourth step of an energy transition, where we don't only look at the electricity system, but also at the transport building system and take a more holistic approach. So we are trying to find partners around the world where we can exchange knowledge, best practices, new technologies, and so on. And that is also the purpose, obviously, with our partnership in South Africa and other regions in the world. I think I will stop here, because Tobias is going to give you more detail on what we are currently doing in our partnership with South Africa. I wish you all a good webinar, and I hope it's informative, and looking forward to your questions and feedback. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Falk, for that introduction. So let me talk briefly about the South African-German Energy Partnership. It was established in 2013, and the main partners are the South African Department of Energy and the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy. And the structure is basically that there is a high-level steering committee chaired by the South African Deputy Minister for Energy and the German State Secretary for Energy, and then a big number of other partners, other departments, ministries from the countries and stakeholders are involved in that steering committee. And below that, there's an energy working group in South Africa established, and that energy working group works on quite a range of different topics. One of them being new business models for municipal utilities. That's the reason why we sit here together. So we had a number of workshops, study tours and studies on this topic to see what can both countries, South Africa and Germany, learn from each other when it comes to municipal utilities, because, or as we call them in German, Stadtwerke, because the structures in both countries are quite similar, so that many consumers receive their electricity from a municipal utility. So that's one of the topics that we are working on under the South African-German Energy Partnership. Another one is hydrogen and fuel cell technology, where also both countries have a lot to share. A third topic is energy efficiency, a fourth research cooperation, and a fifth, which plays a role in all energy partnerships, is private sector cooperation in both countries. If you want to know more about the energy partnership, we've got a website which is at the moment still in preparation, but will be published soon. And the website for the South African-German Energy Partnership is www.energypartnership.org.za, and it will be opened soon. Otherwise, you can also Google for the South African-German Energy Partnership, and will find a brief description of their partnership and contact details and so on the GIZ website. Okay, and I saw one of our speakers has unmuted his microphone already. That's very good, because without further ado, I wanted to hand over to Jan-Ole Voss from BBH and to Matthias Puffe from BBHC, and they will now talk on the German energy transition and municipal utilities, challenges and perspectives in a renewable energy world. And I'm sure they will also present themselves at the beginning of their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tobias. Hello, everyone. This is Ole Voss from BBH and Matthias Puffe from BBHC. Thank you very much for having us this afternoon. I am a lawyer on energy law. We are based in Brussels, and we are advising German and European energy companies on all aspects of energy law in Germany and in Europe. And part of our company group is also a consultancy, BBHC, and Matthias Puffe, my colleague, works for BBHC and is mainly active in all fields of economic and technical issues that are relevant for energy companies. This webinar today is based on a workshop that we did last December together with the South African Energy Partnership, and we try to present a little bit in a shortened version what we presented back then and what we discussed back then with the participants from South Africa. And yeah, we will basically try to convey the most important messages so that everyone or that this hopefully added value can then be useful for everyone. Just very quickly as an introduction, as Tobias just mentioned, in Germany we have a very pluralistic structure of the energy system. So on a distribution level, there are around 900 municipal utilities. Those are energy companies which are owned by the municipalities, and a a major part of German household customers is directly connected to these utilities, and thus, well, yeah, receives energy, gas, and electricity directly from these municipal companies. And in the recent, I would say, 15 to 20 years, there were two major disruptions in the German energy market or the German energy system. The first was a fundamental unbundling or deregulation of the German market. We will cover this topic in next week's webinar. So everyone who is interested in that topic should try to switch in next time. And today we're going to cover the second big change, which is the so-called German Energiewende that Falk Böhmke mentioned already. And this is, in the first step, the total switch to a energy system based on renewable energies, and in the second step, then a complete overhaul of the entire economy in a way that the economy shall function in a fully decarbonized way without producing any greenhouse gas emissions. And yeah, that's me. That's my colleague Matthias. And now we're going to start very briefly first to give an overview what happened in the last couple of years. What was this fundamental change about? And then I'm going to switch to my colleague Matthias, and he will tell us a little bit about how municipal utilities, but also energy companies in general, try to adapt to this fundamental change and try to tackle these challenges that will come in the future. First point is that the German government decided in 2010 that we're gonna go for this Energiewende, and that we take climate change seriously, and that we will try to achieve ambitious targets. That's what you can see here is an overview of the key targets that the German government has laid down, and as you can see, until 2050, it's a quite ambitious reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from -80 to -95%. That shall be done mainly by two ways. On the one hand, we want to produce the energy that we use by renewable energy sources. So we want to expand the renewable energy sources by around 80%. And the other part then is energy efficiency, where we want to introduce a massive energy efficiency changes. You can see reduction of primary energy consumption shall be -50% in 2050. So these are the ambitious targets that are set out by the German government. And what they first did was... Yes?
Can I interrupt? This is Dirk. Can I interrupt you for 1 second? Because there's a question, and this would be quite vital for the person to know before we continue. There's a question: municipal utility, is it the same as a DSO, or is it an energy supply company?
Yes. A municipal utility, or a Stadtwerke, as we call it in Germany, they are active as energy supply companies. So what they do is that on the one hand, they operate the grid, and on the other hand, they supply energy. So in unbundled systems, this is all done, this all comes out of one hand. For example, in South Africa, we know that there's no distinction between grid operation and supply of energy. In Germany, once the liberalization was introduced, this was split up, and we have two different systems, but these municipal utilities are active in both areas. So they supply energy, and they also do the physical operation of the grid. That was clear?
Yes,
Oh,
we
that
can
was
continue.
clear. Okay, so from centralization to decentralization is the heading of this slide, and what happened in Germany is that the entire energy system was completely turned upside down. Formally, you see here the different grid levels. In the upper area is the transmission grid, and in the lower area the distribution grid, where the household customers are connected. And traditionally, under the former classic central system, power production was done on the transmission level, which is to say by big central power plant station, coal, nuclear or lignite on transmission level. These plants were connected to transmission level, and the energy was then transported downstream to the customer. Now this has changed completely. Nowadays, a lot of major amounts of energy are produced on the lowest level, on the distribution level, via a huge amount of electricity generation plants. And then the electricity fed into the grid on distribution level is either distributed directly to household customers, or is then transported upstream to higher grid levels. And this means that this task, the task of the distribution grid operator, the municipal utility, has changed completely. Whereas formerly there were in Germany there were 150 big central power plants. Nowadays we have more than 2 million decentralized power generation units. And you can see here the figures, how this changed from 1991 to 2013. So you see a massive increase in decentral PV and wind plants, but also in gas plants. Those are mostly CHP plants that are operated by municipal utilities. And it's noteworthy that the municipal utilities played a major role in this field. Whereas under the former system of central power generation, municipal utilities owned only a very small share of these power generation units. Around 15% of power generation was done by municipal utilities. Nowadays, as municipal utilities are active on distribution level and are active in decentralized power generation, their share of power production is up to 41%. So this is maybe one of the first outcomes that we can say municipal utilities became more active in producing power for themselves. And how was this done? This major change. How was this created? The German government in the end of the 90s introduced a so-called feed-in tariff system for renewable energies. This meant that power producers, you can see on the left hand here, on the lower level of the slide, you can see the windmill is not getting its payment from the market, from the end customer, but from the grid operator. And this the feed-in tariff system basically obliges grid operators to pay a prefixed tariff for a prefixed time amount to all renewable energy power generators. And the whole system is then financed. Now we have these different arrows, but when you then you can see that the end customer pays a surcharge on its electricity consumption, and this surcharge, the so-called EEG surcharge, is forwarded to the grid system operator, who then pays it to the power producer. So the point I want to make here is that this is a system that is created outside of the market, which is created by political forces, by a law that has been introduced by the German government, the so-called EEG, the Renewable Energy Law in Germany. And as a result, we had this massive, I switch back quickly, this massive growth of renewable power production in Germany, and also of this decentralization in Germany. Now, at the same time, and that's the downside, a big part of the energy market did not participate in the market anymore. And we discussed this at length during the workshop in December, and we thought that this slide that we're showing now is quite a good illustration of how the system works, but it's very complex. So I'm gonna try to reduce myself on the most important point. I just mentioned the EEG surcharge. You can see it here on the right hand in this gray shaded area of the electricity price cake. The circle, or the price cake you see here, is the electricity price, or the elements of the electricity price that has to be paid by a household consumer in Germany. And as you can see, this a prefixed surcharge, which has nothing to do with electricity prices on the market, makes up a considerable share of the overall price. And if you look down on the right hand, you can see the electricity purchase price, and well, it's obvious that the EEG surcharge is higher even than the price that has to be paid for the energy. And this then in turn, or this then shows that for energy companies active on the energy market, it becomes very difficult to offer attractive prices to customers, because the leverage they are having is very little, as only this very small part that we can see on the lower right hand, the price for electricity purchase and procurement, can be influenced by the electricity supply company. We also see this on the next slide. I don't know, Matthias, you wanna say a few words again?
Yeah, okay, I will say a few words on this slide. Hello to everyone, Matthias from BBG speaking. Over there, you see the absolute figures, the amounts in euro for one household customer. With electricity consumption per year of 2,000 kilowatt hours, and the energy procurement part of the total amount of 640 euro. 640 euro you see on the right side of the slide. The amount of energy procurement is 80 euro, 12% of the whole sum the household customer has to pay. The second leverage, the cost of sales before contribution margins, is about 103 euro and 89 cent. So this means 28% are influenceable by the municipal utility, but a lot of price components are not influenceable for them. Grid charges as well as surcharges and fees, as you see over there.
Okay, in other words, what we wanted to make clear with these slides, and I hope this we could convey this message, is that these massive influx of renewable energies on the one hand, created new opportunities for municipal utilities because they could become more active in power generation. On the other hand, it made it much more difficult for them to be profitable in the trade and sales business, because most of these renewable energies were not traded, but were kept outside of the market, and therefore it's very difficult then to offer attractive prices to the customer. This is maybe in a nutshell what can be stated here. I think we skip this slide. It's too complicated, and we get to the next slide. And this is really about now if municipal utilities, how they react to this new energy world, and what are new services they can offer to the customer.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matthias, you want?
Okay, I would like to add a few remarks. The Stadtwerke, the municipal utility, is positioning themselves on a broader spectrum, as not only as energy service company, but also as infrastructure provider, regional platform, coordinator of regional projects, and local enforcer of the Energiewende. So they are project managers for the community. They are a trading platform for local products. They establish infrastructure for the charging of electric vehicles. But also they have a lot of more service offers, not only energy related services. And that is one of the approaches to react on the rising competition based on the commodity supply for electricity and lower margins, because the fixed costs are not shrinking, but the margins are down compared to the situation 10 years before. And so they have to re-establish themselves, have new business models, and a lot of them are depending on their local, the connectivity to local activities. They are in the center of the community. Next slide, please. Ole, next slide.
Yes.
Yeah.
You want to start with this?
Yeah, no. As you see over there, the next slide. Yeah, as you see there, the market price for electricity. Actually, it's in Germany, the electricity is traded on an exchange traded basis, and the electricity price is changing. It's differing from year to year, and there's a high volatility, but the energy procurement costs went down from 2011 to 2017. So the cost for the electricity procurement were lower and lower from year to year. And that also induced an increasing competition, depending on the procurement models of the utility companies. The competition was increased, also because of these price volatility. The next slide, please. Yeah, and what they are doing as utilities, the sales revenues from energy supply, electricity, as well as natural gas or heating, is increasing the next years from 2015 to 2040. And if they try to offset these shrinking sales revenues from energy supply, they need a broader business models. So they increase their sales revenues from services consulting for customers, energy management topics, and such. And that's a strategy approach a lot of utility companies, not only the municipal utility companies, but also the large companies, which are nationwide, try to adopt for themselves. They do this by cooperation with each other. A lot of Stadtwerke, not establish own business models for themselves and have their own budgets, but they do cooperations to have evolution of business models. All of them could enforce for their local community. They stick together. Next slide, please. Yeah. New approaches to the customer. It's not only about electricity supply, but it's a lot of technical components which are necessary and interesting for them. So customer is not one who is only relying on electricity supply, but they also are producing energy based on solar energy, wind energy, micro wind energy, and it's possible to sell them the PV, rooftop PV, as well as the micro wind generation facilities, to consult them on energy efficiency topics, or to have a smart metering in this residential building. There's a lot of approaches on the customer, but all are based on a local, on the possibility to be there for the customer on his household, on his residential building. Yeah, topic very interesting is sector coupling approaches and on small scale energy concepts. Generation of power on the roof, the storage of the electricity, as well as the use of electricity for electric mobiles. And so everything is coming together, but the household customer is he needs an energy manager for himself, and that's the role the local municipal utility could play for them. Next slide, please. Yeah. The evolution or the increased share on renewable energy in Germany is heavily relying on PV. And there are a lot of different PV business models, photovoltaic business models, differing from home, rooftop PV, from 5 to 10 kilowatt peak, up to large ground-mounted systems, which are based on tendering, from 1 to 20 megawatt peak. That's the Champions League, so to speak, the ground-mounted systems, but there are a lot of different approaches. Energy service as a business for the rooftop PV, as well as complex situations on the delivery and production of electricity for tenants, for customer systems, as well as a full feed-in. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah. Next one. Impressive concept for sector coupling is this energy concept in Berlin, capital of Germany, for the Möckernkiez. As you see there are different components, like pieces of the puzzle, biogas, and the gas grid, CHP power plant, which produces electricity as well as heat. There's district heating. It's connected, the red line, to the different residential buildings, as well as the electricity from the rooftop PV, which is fed into the local system to provide electricity for electric mobility, as well as for the households and their demand for electricity. It's system for this Möckernkiez, 14 residential buildings and about 1,000 people who live there. It's from Naturstrom, a German company, which is an innovative one. That's only a pilot project, and not there are not thousands of those projects in Germany, but the amount of these projects is increasing from year to year, and that's yeah, like a blueprint for a lot of other concepts for the future. Next one, please. Yeah. As we heard before in the introduction, energy efficiency is a big deal and issue for Germany. Actually, there was the law, the Energy Services Law, promoting energy efficiency and have energy audits for the companies who are not small or medium enterprises from size. And everyone, larger companies, have to do energy audits and to have a list of their electricity demand, their consumption of natural gas, etc., and to decrease the energy. But actually, it's a problem for the utility company. They could do the consulting work, they could do the auditing, but if they decrease the electricity needed from this customer, they reduce also their total contribution, because if they deliver small amount of energy, so that's a negative feedback for their returns. So that's a bit complicated situation. Everyone participated and made energy audits and had consulting work for this energy management systems, but they are not happy with the situation. But they have to do it. Okay, next slide, please. A very interesting example for the close connection of local municipalities as well as the utility companies is Munich, Stadtwerke Munich. As you see there, city Munich, the capital of Bavaria, is subsidizing the wall boxes to store the generated power and to charge electric mobiles there at Munich. So they have the subsidy only for people living in Munich for about 1,500 euro for the customer. And they have a close connection to the Stadtwerke Munich, the local municipal utility. So they are a full service provider and have a 100% carefree package based on the Stadtwerke and their work at the community. And they together try to increase the number of charging stations in Munich, in the city center for private housing customers, based on this collaboration. Okay, next slide, please. Ole, will you say a few words on this?
Yes, that's the conclusion. I know it might have been a bit complicated right now, or very much information in very short time, but what we wanted to make clear, or what is the major experience from Germany that we can present to others, is that systems can be changed, and very fundamental transitions are possible if there is the political will to do so. And in Germany, one of the big problems was the price, because back then wind and PV was very expensive. Nowadays, it's not so expensive anymore. So transition is really an opportunity for everyone. But the political powers have to be behind it, and the incumbent companies should be taken on board as well. And the German municipal utilities, as many other power utilities throughout the world, realize that the sale of the commodity energy cannot be the only means of business anymore. This is a business idea, a business concept that is not functioning anymore, because people will produce, people will start to engage in self-generation. Renewable energy drives the cost down, and so municipal utilities and energy companies in general will have to find different opportunities, will have to find different business ideas, business concepts to remain profitable in the future. And we think, and that's the experience we're making in Germany, there are a lot of new services where municipal utilities have can provide added value to customers. And yes, we want to support municipal utilities to become active in these areas. So, and that's also a bit what we touched upon in December when we discussed it with the South African participants. You are the one that is, or the customers are connected to you. So you are the closest partner of the customers. So try to become active, try to engage with the customer, try to provide high quality services, and yeah, try to become engaged in these new type of services regarding smart homes, regarding demand side management, e-mobility, digitalization. Yes, that's from my side. I don't know, Matthias, there's a last slide.
Yeah. On his
I
last
don't know
slide,
if you want to say a couple of words.
Yeah. Last slide is showing an interesting point that the utilities are trying to get access on the meter. There's important for the future is the business behind the meter. So that the threat is that Google and other large companies from outside have the access on these meter data, and they are doing the management for the customers. So they try to be in the center of the circle, as you see on the right box, and they try to do the management and to have agreements with Google and other to do the management over there. That's very important for the future. Okay. Thank you. Back
okay,
to
that was
Tobias, please.
Thank you very much. And if there are any questions, yes, please let us know.
Yes. Ole, Matthias, thank you very much. This is Dirk again. Indeed, we have a couple of questions, and I would go through them one by one. Question number one was, it's less a question, it's rather a comment, that it looks like it may be difficult to implement the same system, especially in third world countries where employment is less than 30%. So perhaps, you know, can you maybe talk a bit about the, you know, the pro and cons of energy transition as you prepared it, as you presented it?
I think that's a question for Ole.
No, yeah, as I said already, I mean, it's a good point, because for Germany, the energy transition indeed has been quite costly. We still have an annual budget for the EEG surcharge of around 20 billion euros, and I think it's obvious that in developing countries, household customers cannot bear these costs. But as I said before, prices have decreased dramatically for wind and PV. And well, we expect, and maybe Matthias, you can add on this, we expect that this trend will continue. So nowadays, such a transition will be much less costly than it was years ago. And in a long-term perspective, it will be much more attractive to produce electricity via PV and wind than producing it via coal or nuclear. And we are already seeing the first signs that these projects are on hold. And yeah, we think that nowadays this transition is much more reachable, much more viable without such a high budget as in Germany.
Yeah,
maybe if I can come in there also, and to quote the Director General for Energy of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, Thorsten Herdern, he always says, if countries don't go forward with an energy transition, that would be a mistake because of price reductions, climate change and all these kind of things. But on the other side, it also would be a mistake to do an energy transition exactly in the same way as Germany did it, because exactly there's a lot of good and bad lessons learned from the German example, and that's also one of the reasons why we are trying to share those experiences to see what was a good experience, what can be taken over in other countries, and which problems or mistakes should be avoided when following such a path of a energy transition or Energiewende.
Okay, Tobias, thank you very much. Then I would like to go to the next question raised by Mark Borchers. He says, I think you said electricity is reverse fed from customers on the LV level back to the MV network. If this is correct, what were the challenges in this regard? Were MV-LV transformer changes needed? Are there any challenges?
Yeah, there are challenges to prognosis for this electricity fed in, and that's a large challenge and a challenge to balance the whole energy system. So the DSO, the distribution system operators, as well the TSO, the transmission system operators, are working together and share their data. But they also have an incentive system. It means prognosis with a failure means a larger cost, means cost for them. So they are forced to have an adequate prognosis on that.
Yeah, but
okay.
There's also a second point which is quite important, that the entire grid structure was not made for such a massive feed in on a distribution level. So what we actually need is a lot more investment into grid infrastructure.
Yeah.
And this costs money as well, of course. And as you will see next week, under liberalization, grid infrastructure regulation normally attempts to increase efficiency of grid operators by restricting their investments, and we see now that this might have been the wrong approach for a long-term development of the grid and for a long-term expansion of the grid. And I think a lot of governments in Europe now realize that they need to incentivize investment in grid infrastructure and are currently changing the respective regulations. And the same is happening in Germany. So this is also maybe a good point, because incentivize investment in grid infrastructure. It's just that's the key tool for this holistic approach to an energy system that where we are heading to.
All right. I would like then to move on to the next question. Do German municipal utilities provide energy audit services as an innovative way of generating revenue? Do you know anything about
that? They are providing services for the local community as well as nationwide, the larger municipal utilities. And it's depending if they generate income by their energy services. They have a lot of innovative ways, and they try to have new business models, and they reinvent themselves. But not every approach is a good approach and is successful. So it's depending.
All right. And the next asker is asking, or if you could, if you could talk about some of the challenges faced by municipalities in the context of renewable energy intermittency and how they are tackled currently.
A challenge for them is to be part of the business and the part of the market. They have a competition with large companies for example, the nationwide companies like E.ON, RWE, and so they all compete on the rooftop to have a PV power plants there. And that was one challenge, to have a sales model, to have employees which are customer oriented, to have sales for a PV, for example. It's not the management of the electricity feed in, but it's a sales issue first and foremost for them, because the distribution system operating branch of this Stadtwerk is regulated. So they have a potential to give the costs, to hand over the costs to the customer based on an electricity bill. But the branch of the Stadtwerk, which competes for electricity delivery, they have to compete against 100 competitors in the whole Germany at this distribution system, and the margins are shrinking. They are half the size of 10 years before.
All right. The next two questions, well, we're leaving a bit the municipal utilities here with the next two questions, but I will raise them anyway. Perhaps if you can say something, okay. If you can't, then we have to move on. What are the socio-economic impacts, especially for the staff that works in the coal and nuclear generation plants? What happens when these plants get shut down, and how is Germany dealing with the loss of jobs in the coal industry resulting from the Energiewende, energy transition?
Olaf, for you, the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the German government, as it usually does it, just established a commission that is a group of experts from all different parts of the society, and they will deliberate for the next months, maybe even years, about how such a phase out of coal can be carried out in Germany. I think for the recent or short-term political future, we need not really expect that such a phase out will be conducted quickly. But I am sure that a German government will take into account the social problems that can be posed by such a phase out. It's been a diplomatic answer, but it's a very political question. So
yes, indeed, it is. And we have one more question. The problem is also, it looks like we have been trying to promote renewables as a cheaper energy source, but in reality, the electricity price is still increasing. How do we then convince consumers to use renewables if they are not seen as a reduction in terms of prices? So is it? I mean, yeah.
It depends which costs one is taking into account. The storage of the nuclear waste is not priced into the electricity prices in Germany. So if you price that in to full extent, the calculation would be otherwise.
Right. Okay, and one last question. I'm not 100% sure to what it refers. How is it with biogas? Is there more electricity fed in the grid from biogas, or is it the same? Or I mean, is it increasing, decreasing? Is it stagnating in Germany?
Yeah, it's a problem. Biogas was incentivized in the past, but they changed the regulation on the EEG law in 2017 as well as 2014. So they had a discussion. So biogas is not a large part of CHP generation nowadays, because it's a topic of subsidization, and they changed the regulation in the past to prefer offshore wind.
Yes, and also,
example.
and also, I mean, in Germany we had this tank fuel food debate that a lot of crop was used for biogas production, and this was quite sensitive in many aspects, and so yeah, for this reason, but also for cost reasons, the German government decided to reduce the support for biogas, which then really was a problem for many projects, and which these projects had to be put on hold then in the end.
All right.
And currently the circumstances are not really attractive for biogas projects in Germany.
Yes. Okay. Any more questions, written, or if somebody wants to talk, raise your hand symbolically. There's one more question. Any system stability issues? Well, what are the system stability issues experienced with the increased penetration of renewable energy? I guess it's a grid-related question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are no more instabilities on the system, but in Germany we have an integrated system with Europe. So there's also electricity from the Netherlands, from Switzerland, and they manage the system as a Europe system and coordinate themselves, the TSO. But it's a cost issue, because there are a lot of costs involved for improvement of the network structure, for the grid, to have a smart grid and smart grid components, to have a better steering of the system, more data gathering. So it's quite an issue, but not for instability. The system is stable.
The system is stable, but it's much more difficult for grid operators to keep the system in balance.
Yeah.
For example, the German government introduced several tools for grid operators to address imbalances in the system. For example, a capacity reserve has been introduced, and so the system of maintaining grid stability has become more costly as well. I think this is fair to say.
They could cut off renewables, for example, and they're doing this a lot, increasing from year to year.
Yeah, there's a curtailment system that is used quite often by grid operators to curtail renewable energy production in case of local grid bottlenecks.
Okay, I have one more question here. Are municipal utilities looking into procurement of ancillary services from distribution grid?
And the question and the issue is what exactly?
Procurement of ancillary services. So I'm not 100% sure what it means.
Ole, do you have a guess?
Well, if I understand the question right, but maybe with Deep can clarify. So many German municipal utilities, which might have in the past only be distributors of electricity, nowadays, for example, invest in wind parks or solar parks, or while also in shares of coal power plants and these kind of things. So they really went from a pure distributor then also into the role of a generator.
Maybe would this person who raised the question like to? like to express the, I mean, to elaborate the question already? Then I can put you on mute. Should we try it?
I mean, here's there's a clarification.
Can you hold it for a second? This is the person. I give the word to you.
Yeah. Can you listen to me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah. So what I'm asking is like the SmartNet project has been going on in EU. So like they are looking for a market from the distribution grid for procuring those ancillary services like reactive power control and primary frequency control, stuff like that. So are there any plans with German municipal utilities for procurement of such services, provided that EV is coming and they can also provide vehicle to grid services, so such kind of services from like distribution grid?
Yes. Okay. I got the question. In my view, currently on EU level, there is a big fight going on between TSOs and DSOs. Until now, DSOs are mostly not allowed to become active in this field. Especially, they cannot provide any ancillary services regarding frequency control. And yeah, well, now DSOs or municipal utilities, they want to become more active in this regard. One even thinks about the creation of regional balancing markets, but the TSOs are against such a development and want to keep these tools in their hands. So I think this is a bit an open development. Where we have to see in the especially now in the next months, because there's a big regulatory package of the energy union of the European Union that is coming up, and that will deal with these issues.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. There's the last question, but more organizational. Is it possible to share with us the audio recording of the session? I think yes, but I would like to hand over the question to Tobias.
Yes, thanks, Dirk. We will definitely share the recording. So we are still recording the webinar, and we'll provide it on our website of the Energy Partnership, but then also on other websites so that the people can listen into it, can see the explanation of the slides again, or can also share the whole webinar with others that couldn't attend today. But so yeah, thanks to everyone for attending, the attendees, the speakers. I think it was a very interesting session, webinar, good questions. I hope a kind of fruitful discussion already. We will continue the discussion not only in the webinar next week on Tuesday, where we will have a second part, and then looking more into other parts somehow of the Energiewende, but not really induced by the wish to change to renewable energy, but more triggered by EU liberalization, deregulation, and what that meant for municipal utilities and how they had to change their business model. So that will be the topic next week, where again Jan-Ole Voss from BBH and then Florian Umlauf from BBHC will talk to. And yeah, so I hope we will see all you attendees again next week. Yeah, so the recording I mentioned already, we will provide. And we will definitely here in South Africa, under the South African German Energy Partnership, we will also continue to work on the topic, and also our colleagues from the South African German Energy Program, another program implemented by GIZ, the German Development Corporation, is working on this topic in the future. And so we will have platforms to discuss that also more in depth, and what South African municipal utilities can learn from the Germans and vice versa in the future here in South Africa. Okay, so I think I just wanted to show you the last slide are my contact details, but I think they also came with the registration. So if you tonight or tomorrow morning when you wake up have further questions in regard to this webinar, don't hesitate to send an email, and then we will try to answer. So yeah, thanks again to everyone, and don't forget to answer those questions, like a small questionnaire which you will receive just now after the webinar. It would help us a lot to prepare future webinars, to develop them in the right way, and also stay in contact with those who are interested in having further contact on the energy partnership. Dirk, do you want to say something?
Well, no. I think all the questions were there. The recordings I will send to you, and then we will continue next week.
Great. Thanks a lot, and have a good evening all around the globe.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.